anti-war campus protests spread. But in Boston, police at Northeastern move in as activists nationwide dig in.
That there's still a genocide being committed against Gaza by the Israeli state.
In the Middle East, new protests in Israel, with a showdown in Gaza looming.
I'm Deborah Patter in Jerusalem, where a new Hamas propaganda video showing 2 hostages has given fresh impetus to families demanding a deal.
Plus, Weekend Journal. These Texas Vietnam vets tour the nation's war memorials, and reporter Doug Dunbar revisits his own painful past.
Let's picture my dad. That's my dad's name.
And later, a presidential stage of a different kind. It happens here, where the president becomes comedian-in-chief.
This is the CBS Weekend News from New York with Adriana Diaz.
The student outrage over Israel's war on Hamas lighting up college campuses. Here's what's new in New York, a tent city at NYU, and Caltech's closing its campus for the rest of the semester. Protests have spread across the country, leading to a national debate over free speech and the use of force. We have coast-to-coast coverage from Michael George and Elise Preston. First, here's Michael outside Columbia University.
Mark, good evening. The protests here at Columbia today have been peaceful and quiet. Organizers told us they wouldn't make any public statements today. But demonstrators have said they won't leave until their demand is met, that the school divest from companies that do business with Israel.
On day 11 of the Columbia protests, students say they have no plans to leave this encampment. Columbia's president, Manoush Shafiq, under fire for her response from some on the left and right. Among them, some faculty, including Columbia professor Joseph Howley.
When the university called the NYPD in, what did that do to the situation?
I mean, it was a disastrous escalation of the situation in every possible way. It was a completely ineffectual gesture.
The Columbia demonstrations have spread across the country, and at some universities, protesters have been dealt with aggressively.
For what reason? I'm just standing on the sidewalk.
This morning, police arrested over 100 demonstrators at Northeastern University in Boston. At Ohio State, 3 were arrested as protesters clashed with police.
Give me a reason why you're doing this.
In Atlanta, dozens were arrested at Emory University. Elise Preston is at UCLA.
A fence surrounds this part of campus where dozens of pro-Palestinian tents are set up. Students here at this public university are demanding UCLA divest from companies with ties to Israel. It's been largely peaceful here, but a few miles away at USC, at least 93 people were arrested earlier this week. Citing security reasons, USC has canceled its main graduation ceremony.
At Columbia, commencement is less than 3 weeks away and in danger of being delayed or postponed.
Kind of worrying about my graduation seems a little bit of minimal in terms of, seeing what's happening around the world.
And it's worth noting that the seniors graduating this year are part of the COVID generation. Many of them also missed their high school graduation ceremonies due to the COVID lockdowns. Mark?
Michael George and Elise Preston, thanks. Today, President Biden shared this photo of his meeting with 4-year-old Abigail Edan. She was the first and youngest hostage Hamas released. Both her parents killed in the October 7th attack. The president adding that he will not rest until every hostage like Abigail, ripped from their families and held by Hamas, is back in the arms of their loved ones. CBS's Deborah Patta is in East Jerusalem tonight.
Good evening. Hamas has released another propaganda video which cannot be independently verified, showing 2 hostages, including 64-year-old Israeli-American Keith Siegel. This as family and friends demand the time is now to strike a deal.
Every week, protests grow louder and angrier, giving demonstrators out on the streets tonight fresh impetus. A new Hamas propaganda video showing Keith Siegel and Omri Miran speaking under duress. Loved ones fear time is running out for a deal ahead of an expected invasion of Rafah, which is already under regular bombardment. Today, once again, began and ended with mourning. After at least 3 Israeli strikes hit what is mostly a tent city, sheltering over half of Gaza's 2.3 million Palestinians. There were more heartbreaking farewells to tiny bodies wrapped in shrouds. This infant has known only war her entire life. It's been a brutal week for children. Even little miracle baby Sabrine Al-Rou, who was saved from her dying mother's womb, did not make it. She died on Thursday. The UN Population Fund's Dominic Allen recently returned from Gaza and told us he barely recognized the place.
Our big concern for the 180 women giving birth every single day in unthinkable situations.
Over 5,000 women will give birth in the next month. Many of them will be facing evacuation if the Rafah invasion goes ahead.
Having seen the destruction with my own eyes in Khan Yunis, it's unimaginable to think that these civilians will be able to move to any safe place.
Much of what remains of Gaza are the remnants of a battlefield.
Adding to the misery, starvation. The United Nations warning famine, which is totally preventable, is still imminent, Mark, and will reach northern Gaza in May.
Deborah Pata, thank you. For Democrats in a presidential election year, 2024 is starting to feel like 1968. A divisive war, campus protests, an unpopular incumbent, and a summer political convention in Chicago. President Biden's facing all that, and Donald Trump, too. CBS's Natalie Brand is at the White House tonight. Natalie?
Good evening, Mark. There's a little more than 6 months until Election Day, and the president and former president are setting the stage for a general election debate.
We're willing to do it Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, or Friday night on national television.
Spending the week not on the campaign trail but on trial, Trump said he's ready to debate President Biden. This after the president said he's open to the face-off during a radio interview with Howard Stern.
I'm happy to debate it.
The president also told Stern that he condemns the former president's actions on January 6th and Trump's campaign promise to pardon individuals convicted in connection with the U.S. Capitol attack.
It was derelict. It was almost criminal. He did nothing. He just sat there and watched what was happening. Not a single, and now he wants to he calls them patriots and victims.
Trump's federal election interference case remains on hold and could be delayed until after the November election, as the U.S. Supreme Court weighs presidential immunity and whether the former president can be prosecuted.
This is 8 days that we've all been sitting in this courthouse.
A first for a former U.S. president, as Trump attended week 1 of testimony in his criminal hush money trial in New York. He's denied wrongdoing and complained the courtroom has sidelined him from the campaign trail. Trump is scheduled to return to key battlegrounds of Michigan and Wisconsin on Wednesday. Also this week, a federal judge in author E. Jean Carroll's civil defamation case against Trump upheld the verdict, an $83 million judgment denying his motion for a new trial. Mark?
Natalie Brand, thank you. Another win for the United Auto Workers in the Right to Work South. The union reached a tentative deal with Daimler Trucks just before the Friday midnight deadline. The 4-year agreement includes pay raises of over 25% and the start of profit sharing. And now up for sale, a lightly driven 2001 Jaguar XJ sedan fit for a queen. It was Queen Elizabeth's car with a gorgeous British racing green exterior and cream leather interior. What was hers could now be yours. The latest auction high bid, around $60,000. Today, we're learning of the death of actress Marla Adams. Adams spent parts of 5 decades playing Dina Abbott Mergeron on The Young and Restless, right here on CBS. Her Emmy-winning portrayal of a character with Alzheimer's touched many viewers. She also appeared on Golden Girls and The Love Boat. Marla Adams was 85 years old. And straight ahead on the CBS Weekend News, battle scars. Why these Texas veterans are finally visiting the nation's war memorials. Burst of joy. It's the homecoming feeling every Vietnam vet imagined. It's also the name of this Pulitzer Prize-winning photo of a returning POW in 1973. But for many vets, that unpopular war turned their homecoming into another battle scar. until now. As Doug Dunbar of CBS News Texas shows us from Washington in tonight's Weekend Journal.
It is so easy to remember the pain of being forgotten.
It kind of gets to you. It really does. When I first had somebody say, "Thanks for your service," I couldn't even talk.
Nearly 40 Vietnam War veterans with deeply personal stories of the pain of war and the hurt and shame when they came home.
It was very discouraging to think that I'd been over there fighting and these people were doing that to me when I came back. So you kept it quiet for a long time, never talked about it much.
The journey to the memorials in Washington for the nearly 40 Vietnam War veterans saw 5 decades of emotion slowly beginning to surface.
Thinking about how many of these people I knew, how many of them I don't know. I know there's a lot of names up here. It touches me.
Trying to look at all these names is just overwhelming.
You could feel a common grief, and for some, a common guilt.
They're the heroes. We're just the guys that survived, and we live with the guilt that we survived. That's the one thing that I feel like I've always felt guilty.
The first thing that really grabs your attention at the Vietnam War Memorial Wall is the size of it, the enormity. It gets bigger as you walk down. The names stay the same size. 58,000 plus names on here, and everybody knows somebody, and that includes me. That's a picture of my dad. That's my dad's name.
It's a moving experience. It's somebody you love so much you just can't stand in these eyes, and it takes you part of your heart away. So I really like them.
I understand that.
Yeah, I know. I understand.
Thank you for your service.
If time has the ability to heal, the clock moved unfairly slow for those in the Vietnam War.
Thank y'all for coming out.
But it's amazing what just 36 hours showing you care can do.
You know, the homecoming we got was terrible. And today, when we got off that airplane and those people were clapping, that meant the world to me, because it took me a long, long time to get over. I don't know that I ever got over it 100%.
Doug Dunbar, CBS News, Fort Worth, Dallas.
Wow, quite a story. We'll be right back. This is our Saturday feel-good moment. An orphaned and marooned orca calf has finally swum its way to freedom. The orca's mother died on a sandbar off Vancouver's west coast. The calf trapped itself in a shallow lagoon for more than a month. But with the boost of a high tide, she swam to open waters and, with luck, a reunion with her orca family. Also at sea, the Olympic torch sailed today from Greece to France. This 3-masted ship will bring the lantern carrying the torch across the Mediterranean. It's a 12-day sail to Marseille, and from there, the torch heads to Paris. That torch will light the Olympic flame, heralding the opening of the Summer Games on July 26th. And today is the third and final day of the NFL draft, teams remaking rosters and rebuilding Super Bowl dreams. Starting this season, another change. The league will give players the option to wear added protection during games, soft-shell helmet covers known as Guardian caps. Some players wore them during training camp the last couple of preseasons. The league reported that concussions dropped nearly 50%. Next on the CBS Weekend News, the Nerd Prom. We'll look at the history of the White House Correspondents' Dinner. The Washington Hilton tonight will host the so-called Nerd Prom, the annual White House Correspondents Association dinner. Over the decades, this Hilton has seen them come and go, from White House greats to wannabes.
You see him over the hill. Don Lemon would say that's a man in his prime.
President Biden returns tonight for a tradition since 1924. The president and the press yucking it up with one-liners and zingers. It's a gala, black tie mandatory, with comic timing and thick skin suggested.
Presidents kind of get to go into a more informal setting, let their hair down a bit, and indeed poke fun at themselves.
Over the last few months, I've lost 10 pounds. Where did they go?
Is there a political calculation in all that, too?
There's always a political calculation. You know, everything that's done in Washington is political.
Hollywood A-listers now clamor to get an invite to the Hilton's ballroom. Some critics don't like the gala. They say it's proof of a cozy relationship between the White House and the media. You might also remember the Hilton as the stage for an assassination attempt. Outside the hotel in 1981, John Hinckley shot and wounded President Reagan.
At least 4 of the bullets found a target. One of them, the President of the United States.
Reagan, still recovering, called in to the dinner.
Well, I'm happy to be speaking to the White House correspondent spring prom. I'm sorry that I can't be there in person.
The hotel and the president survived and thrived after the assassination attempt.
Sometimes in politics, the laughs are intentional. And that's the news for this Saturday. Tomorrow on CBS Sunday Morning, Dan Rather looks back. And then it's Face the Nation. Margaret Brennan's guests include Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell and Pennsylvania Congresswoman Summer Lee. For now, I'm Mark Strassman in New York. Good night.